Well, our friend Andrew Breitbart is gone, and now that some of the personal sting is starting to wear off a little, we're left with a hole in our ranks that no one seems to know how to fill. Andrew was irreplaceable. That's why he has to be replaced. His shoes have to be filled because the work he was doing is simply too important. But replaced by whom and how? Well, let's bring two friends of mine who are also friends of Andrew, Steve Green, and Scott Ott into the picture here, guys. Lads, we have to try and put behind us some of the sadness now and see if we can figure out a way to best honor Andrew's memory by keeping his work going forward. I think if we can combine Glenn Reynolds' idea of an army of Davids with Breitbart's understanding of how the media is the enemy, then perhaps we can recruit the thousands of people it's going to take to fill that one man's shoes. Scott, let's start with you. Of all of Andrew Breitbart's achievements, the greatest in my mind certainly was the way he rolled out James O'Keefe and Hannah Giles' videos that took down Acorn. James and Hannah were just two unknown people who decided to see just how far corruption could go. Just like real reporters 20, 30, 40 years ago. Scotty, can anybody just go and do that?
Well, I think he proved that anybody can just go and do that. Now, obviously, he had had a little bit of a tailwind because he had been working with Matt Drudge. He had come to understand how the media works behind the scenes. He'd been handling headlines and working with reporters over a long course of years without anybody even knowing who he was. And so he built up that experience. But since he has kicked the door down, he makes it possible for the rest of us to do the same as well. And the key thing in doing this is going to be, as you mentioned in another Trifecta episode this week, that we do so with integrity, that we tell the truth, that we know what the tactics of the left are, but we don't adopt their character in the course of carrying out our objectives.
That's right. Well, video doesn't lie, as a general rule. Steve, you know, it doesn't have to be going undercover into the heart of Mordor either. Time and time again, we've seen politicians being embarrassed into answering the questions that the mainstream media won't ask them by regular people on the streets. You know, you used to need a camcorder. Now all you need is to have your smartphone with you. Do you think that citizen journalists can step up and save the republic?
Yeah, one simply doesn't carry a camcorder into Mordor, I guess. Bill, first let me say, you know, a movement lost a leader last week, but you lost a dear friend, and your afterburner last week, this segment today, I think it speaks well of Andrew, your friendship, and I think it speaks well of you too, and I'm glad you're doing this.
Yeah.
But to answer your question, if citizen journalists don't do it, then who will? I'm not trying to flatter our viewers with this, but the Washington Press Corps has a vested interest in big government. I think I made this point before. George Stephanopoulos would not be worth $6 million a year covering a sleepy little town like D.C. is supposed to be. Half of these jokers wouldn't even have jobs anymore. Big government is their bread and butter, or maybe I should say it's their bread and circuses. But, you know, we're the one footing the bill.
That's right. Thank you, by the way, Steve. That's very nice of you. Guys, I want you to take a look at this graphic that appeared within a few hours of Andrew's death starting to spread all over the place. I really, really like this. First of all, it doesn't say Breitbart was here. It says Breitbart is here. And I think the spirit of it is to put these things up everywhere, to let these scoundrels know that even though they have a pass from the mainstream media, they don't get a pass from the American people. Just Google Breitbart is here on Google Images, and you can print and download as many as you want to. Put them everywhere you see an Obama 2012 bumper sticker. Scotty, do you think that a sea of thousands of Breitbarts will help keep politicians honest? Not just thousands of the posters, but thousands of people going out to do what he set out to do, which is simply report the news.
Well, yes, and I think, frankly, it's already underway, and it has been for several years now. I mean, you know, let's give a phone call to Dan Rather and ask him how he's doing these days. I mean, you no longer have the situation where the mainstream media has a very few channels through which they can force whatever content and whatever opinion they want with impunity, without challenge. You actually have a constant feedback loop that keeps them honest. And frankly, the average mainstream media reporter should feel like the average street thug does in a town where concealed carry licenses are available.
That's a great line, Scotty. And folks, let me just tell you, he just gave me Scott just really clarified something about this for me. Don't go after the politicians. Go after the reporters. Go after the reporters with news cameras and camcorders and ask the reporters questions. Go after the media. Steve, any other thoughts on how people at home can do a small part? Because none of us can do what Andrew Breitbart did all by himself, and that's help to bring some kind of balance and honesty to how the democratic media complex works.
Yeah, there's just one thing, and this isn't to you, this is to all of our viewers, speak. Speak. When you hear or read something that you know is untrue, don't shrug it off. That's effectively the same thing as telling a lie yourself, repeating the lie. Speak up, start a blog, get on Twitter. You know what, you talk about taking it to the journalists themselves. There are a lot of Washington, D.C. press corps journalists on Twitter. Go there. When you see them saying something stupid, retweet it, just like Breitbart would have done. And go down to Media Matters. Follow them. Watch the hate. Read the hate. Respond. Speak up. Speak out. You can't fill Breitbart's shoes, but that doesn't mean you can't do your part, and you do it by speaking. Speak.
Let me just add one thing to what Steve Green said as well. You know, speaking out is important, folks, because if you remember the story of the Emperor's New Clothes, everybody's nodding and saying, "Oh, Your Majesty, what a spectacular wardrobe." It only takes one person. It only takes one person to speak the truth, even a child. And everybody else knows it, and it's over. You don't get it back again after that. Well, my friends, I wasn't kidding. If, like me, you thought the work that Andrew was doing was irreplaceable, then we have no choice but to replace it. You need to go to political rallies, you need to go to town hall meetings, you need to go to fundraisers and all the rest of it. Have the courage, as Andrew did, to ask the tough questions and see if you can get the questions and the answers on video. You know, Andrew has left behind an entire network, Breitbart TV, Big Hollywood, Big Government, Big Journalism, and Big Peace, that, along with venues like PJTV, can get that video seen, and if the story's good enough, it'll turn into national news. Remember Joe the plumber? He did real damage to Barack Obama. He was just a guy asking a question of someone not used to answering tough questions. You know, one Andrew Breitbart had them running in fear and lashing out in terror, but an army of Breitbarts, now that's something for them to really fear. For PJTV, I'm Bill Whittle, and we're all Andrew Breitbarts today.